Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome back to the City of Phear. I'm your host, Brendan Jordan, and we've got something extra special for you tonight. Before we get into that, though, happy 4th of July and 250th birthday, America. Hope we get many more, or at least a few more. The time I'm releasing this, I'm probably just about to watch the USA take on Belgium in the World Cup, and they're going to be celebrating like crazy or licking my wounds. Tonight I've got a special treat for y'all. Instead of having to hear another one of my stories, you get to hear something good for a change. A few months ago, I put out a few calls on Reddit asking for story submissions, and though I didn't get a whole lot, I got a few folks submitting complete gems. I really enjoyed this one, and I think you guys will like it too. So, without further ado, I present to you The Scavengers by J.D. Wheeldon. The heavy stomp of leather boots reverberated from the rough concrete walls of the dilapidated structures around us, combining with the crunch of gravel and sand which had once been the remnants of shattered glass, scattered before us like dismal sand. Great gray surfaces, mottled with large gashes, exposed brick and crumbling masonry stretched out ahead, melting into a thick layer of fog. I stopped for a moment to catch my breath, looking upwards into the forlorn gray sky. Heavy mist entwined itself around the square towers of what once were buildings that housed thousands of people from the world before, snaking through the empty window frames and decapitated rooftops. Now the ruined city was almost devoid of human life, wretched monument to what was and what can never be. "Are you all right, Stefan?" came the soft voice of the petite girl who clung to my back. Though I could not see her, I could tell her face was heavy with concern. "I'm fine," I said, making a conscious effort to control my breathing and make it seem as though I were less tired than what was reality. "I just need a drink is all." Loosened the bindings which held Flo to my back and gently lowered her down, resting her back against a sturdy brick wall. I unzipped the main pouch of my dirty brown satchel and revealed a battered metal flask. I unscrewed the lid with a high-pitched squeak and offered the beverage to Flo. She shook her head. "No thanks, you drink. You're the one who's been doing all the heavy lifting." You must be thirsty too. It's almost been 3 hours since we set off." She shook her head and I did not pressure her. Liquid sloshed inside the container as I took a gulp. The metallic taste filled my mouth and quenched my dry throat. Water was scarce, and what we had was heavily rationed. Dry winds made scavenging dangerous, as thirst would hit you soon. But although the cloud cover was constantly thick, rain rarely fell. "How's your leg?" I asked, glancing down at the heavily padded limb. "It feels much better already." She lied. I knew it was broken. The makeshift splint I had fashioned might be alleviating some of the pain. But the way the stone column had landed on her and the way she screamed made the outcome obvious. She may even lose the leg when we get back to camp. If we got back. "You really should drink," I said again, forcing the flask into her hand. She reluctantly took a minute sip before screwing the cap back on and pushing the container back into my satchel. "Happy now?" she said sarcastically, a defiant smirk on her face. I had to admire her. Even in the face of such danger as this, she seemed unafraid. She had such passion burning inside of her, and through the many years we had spent together, it had become a beacon of safety for me. Life was difficult here. It was dangerous. Our group was small, but we did our best to scour the city in search of food and water. But the crumbling edifices were treacherous to navigate. Me and Flo had been a team for almost 5 years now, and I was not ashamed to say that without her, it would be almost useless to the group. She had begged me to leave her behind. Begged me! She said that she would be able to take care of herself overnight, and I could return to pick her up in the morning. We both knew that was impossible, as was me leaving her behind. After all, it was my fault this happened to her. We'd stumbled across an old shopping center. At least that's what the sign had said. I didn't even know the meaning of the words, but I understood food court. The structure was massive, with huge holes lining the roof, which had once housed gigantic sheets of crystal glass. The marble floors were covered in a thick layer of dust, and the twisted carcasses of metal frame trolleys were piled against the walls in rubble. We followed the signs and ventured deeper into the belly of the building, its dark corridors opening up, beckoning to us. Flo began to get nervous as the windows became smaller and the buildings became darker. She wanted to turn back, but I insisted we push further. We'd never found this place before, and it's likely that no one else had either. We weren't the only camp within the city, but there weren't many. We'd occasionally traded with a smaller group, but we had not seen them for a number of weeks. Talk amongst the camp elders was that they had been lost to the night, taken by the cold ones. We finally made it to the food court, but to my dismay, there was barely anything of any value. Most of what we found had rotted away years before, leaving only dust and the bones of hundreds of chickens. We managed to salvage a few tins of beans and some bottled water before making our way out. Journey in was treacherous, climbing over rubble and burnt tables, yet it was more so as we made our way out. As Flo leaped from a pile of rubble to a stone plinth, the column supporting it gave way. She toppled to the floor and the heavy masonry came with her, collapsing onto her leg and snapping the bone beneath torn flesh and tattered clothes. Her scream echoed through the empty hallways, and my heart almost forced its way out through my mouth. I rushed to her aid, scrambling to remove the heavy stone on top of her as a torrent of sweat poured from my dry skin, but the damage had been done. The skin was swollen, red, and purple, sticking out at an unusual angle like a boomerang. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her eyes looking into mine, full of pain and anguish. She clutched at my arms, and I held her shaking body. 1,000 thoughts of guilt flooded my mind. I killed her. I killed the woman I love. For a few tins of beans. The broken bone wouldn't be so bad, but there was no chance she'd be able to walk back home. We had nothing with which to build a fire. That's when she had told me to leave her. I had told her to shut up. Screamed it at her through the tears. Retrieved some metal poles from the remnants of the trolleys and tore off strips of cloth from my shirt. All I could say was how sorry I was as I forced the bone back into place with a wet crunch. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and she almost lost consciousness. I used the time to fix the pole to her leg, tying it tightly to support the limb. She refused to be carried at first, flailing wildly in protest, but once she had acknowledged that I was not going to leave her behind, and that her stubborn attempts to make me drop her were slowing us down, she ceased. She'd been quiet for most of the journey, sobbing silently to herself. I pushed forwards, retracing our steps, fighting back tears as I searched for a waypoint. Anything I could identify that would lead us back home. "Am I too heavy?" came the meek voice, which brought me back into reality. "Of course," I replied. "She's probably going to diet when we get back." She hit me on the arm and smiled, her cheeks flushed with a warm red that made me smile. "You're gonna have to get back on," I said. "It'll be dark in a few more hours." "Do you know where we're going?" she asked. "Of course." I squatted down as she wrapped her arms around me, allowing me to lift her up. Breathed in the sweet scent of her arms, warm spices and cheap soap. Even after all this, she still smelled better than me. Gently hooked her legs through the hoops attached to the backpack I had customized to make it easier to support her, and we set off down the dismal street, monolithic towers stretching above us, none of them familiar to me. "I hate this place," mumbled, trudging forwards. "We go through hell, and most days we find nothing. No food, no resources, nothing. We should move away, into the hills. Heard there are some settlements out there. It'd probably be safer away from the city.
I doubt it. I heard Malik say that the bomb that hit closest to here was in the hilllands behind the forest.
Flo replied grimly.
It killed everything around it and opened up a huge crack in the valley. Malik says that's where they live. That's where they come from. There's more of them out in the woods than there are in the city.
I shuddered at the thought. I'd never seen one in the flesh, only heard rumors. Me and Flo rarely got night watch duty on the account of us heading out during the day. We got to sleep. But I had heard that the others who tend the fires at night had seen them. Seen the pale eyes watching from the gloom and the murk of the surrounding streets. For some reason, they dared not approach the fires that we kept lit around the camp, which was why it was so important to keep them lit once the sun had set. Other camps had apparently not been so lucky. Thought made me conscious of the dimming light. Our shadows stretched before us longer than ever as the sun behind us sank lower behind the gray wall of clouds. I picked up the pace, my breathing becoming loud as small beads of sweat began to trace lines from underneath my deerstalker.
We're not going to make it, Stefan, warned Flo.
We will.
No, we won't. I told you to leave me.
Shut up. We will.
We need to find a place to stay for the night. Somewhere safe and secure.
As usual, she was right. Instead of foolishly wasting light, blindly moving forwards, we should be searching for somewhere hidden. Somewhere with doors we could barricade. I scanned the area. Nothing spectacular drew my attention. The street was lined with old shops. The huge windows had become gaping portals into the street. Easy access. I saw a tight alleyway between two imposing apartment buildings. Brown moss grew along the red brick walls, leaving an earthy scent in the cold, dry air. Halfway down the left-hand wall was a heavy-looking metal door, open halfway.
That might work,
Flo said, optimistically looking over my shoulder. I made my way towards it and cautiously began to push it open, far enough to look inside. The hinges were bent and rusted, and it took great amounts of effort from my skinny arms to open. It scraped along the uneven ground, but finally I was able to peer into the gloom. It was some kind of storage room full of old, rusted filing cabinets, dissolved cardboard boxes, and melted plastic items. There was one other door, which must have led into the building, but otherwise, there were no windows, holes in the walls. It was perfect. I moved some of the drier cardboard over to a corner and lowered Flo down before heaving a large number of the heavier cabinets in front of the now-closed door. I didn't want to take any chances and piled up more than was probably necessary. We'd never been away from camp at night before. Prided ourselves on being able to navigate the city, do a full sweep of an area, and returning before the sun was close to setting. Lately it had been different. Resources were harder to come by, and we were forced to go further into the city than we ever had before. The risks were greater, but so were the rewards. It was only a matter of time before we pushed our luck too far, though, and now we'd been left to fend for ourselves against the horrors of the night. As the room was sealed, we were plunged into darkness. Fumbled around to find my satchel and pulled from it a long, smooth tube with a small handle and a series of gears attached to the side. I cranked the handle, causing the device to rattle and buzz as the gears whirled, activating the mechanism within. After a few minutes of turning the handle, I flipped the switch and a dim yellow light emitted from the bulb at the end of the torch.
"The sun should have set by now," said Flo quietly. "Give me the torch. I'll keep a lookout while you rest."
"You should be the one resting," I protested.
"Please, I'm not the one carrying a bossy cow on their backs through this fucking dismal city."
I suppose you're right, I agreed. You can be bossy. She rolled over closer to me and planted a soft kiss on my dry cheek. I wrapped my arm around her. When I had stopped walking, I realized just how cold it was. Winds outside whipped the sides off the building, and I could hear the support beams groaning against the force. She moved the torch around the room, and I tried to imagine what life would have been like before any of this happened. We had both been born into this world of perpetual cloud and cold. Malik was old, but even he wasn't old enough to remember the time before, unlike his father, who would often regale to him stories of a better time, a better life. The city was once crawling with life. Roads were full of cars powered by petrol and oil, ferrying the inhabitants to and fro in their busy lives of work and leisure. The sun often shone down, warming the city and the spirits of those who lived within. Joy could be found on every street corner. Then the bombs fell without warning. It isn't clear why it happened. You just know that it did. In moments, the world before was burned away in the light of 1,000 suns. Atomic fire burned away the trees of the land and liquefied those closest to it. Dust was thrown in the air, blotting out the sun and spread into all corners of the globe. The radiation caused fluctuations in the magnetosphere, resulting in freak weather and heavy winds, scouring the lands of any water or nutrients. Very few survived initially, and many later died of radiation poisoning. Years later, and we still struggle on, as does the planet, as it tries to heal itself from the terrible wounds carved into it by the narrow-sighted leaders of the world before. My mind filled with strange images of happy people walking down the streets in shorts and t-shirts. My eyes became heavy, without my knowledge or permission, closing themselves as I drifted off into a deep slumber, cradling the small frame of Flo as she leaned into me, her body warm and soft. Now, I'm not sure how long I slept, or what it was that woke me, but my eyes snapped open and struggled to adjust to the darkness that enveloped me. My brain attempted to make sense of its surroundings as I eventually remembered the situation we were in. I shivered violently and my skin pimpled with goosebumps as I felt the wind against my cheek. There was a breeze in the room. There must be an opening. I started to panic and I sat up. I grasped for the torch and I noticed Flo. She wasn't there. Surely she wouldn't leave without me. "Flo," I whispered as I got onto my knees, groping in the inky blackness of the night for the torch or any sign of her. I suddenly froze when I heard a strange noise. My ears rang as they attempted to pick up the weird sound from the dark corner of the room. It was rhythmic, regular, like short, ragged breaths. Was it Flo? Perhaps she had developed a fever. Infection could have set in. "Flo, are you alright?" I said as I moved forwards. It wasn't her. It wasn't my love, the sweet woman who had been my companion for over 5 years. I halted my advance from the murk. 2 large, round, pale orbs moved up to look into my eyes. Looked into my face, into my soul. I felt the blood in my veins freeze with fear. My skin wept a cold sweat as every nerve in my body told me to flee. My eyes became more attuned to the darkness, and I could make out its shape. It was hunched over something in the corner. Its arms and legs, oddly long and slender, bent in acute angles as it kept its body close to the ground. Its head was large and round, encompassing the great pale orbs that were its eyes. Below them, a wide set of needle-like teeth reflected the silver light of the moon that seeped in through cracks and small holes in the walls. It seemed to grin at me as it stared, unblinking, unmoving. Its sickening wheezes permeated the air. It moved forwards. Its hand and feet slapped wetly against the cold ground as it advanced towards me, otherwise silent in its unnatural movements. The stench of rotten decay filled my olfactory senses as its face came within inches of mine, and I felt the wetness of its breath against my skin. My hair stood on end as I looked into its soulless eyes. They told a tale of pain and terror. Portals into unimaginable horror spawned from a world of darkness beneath the hilllands. I closed my eyes, unable to look into the abyss any longer, and as the night took me, I wept alone. Well, that's all, folks. First story by the first guest author. Hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed producing it. So much thanks to JD for submitting this story along with a few others. A little bit about JD. JD comes to us from Petersburg in the UK. JD's a vet nurse by day and a horror and dark fantasy author when he can manage to stay awake. He's written a bunch of short stories and has been published in a few collections. He's written and self-published 3 novels, 2 of which, Incubus and The Bleak Woods, are available on Amazon, so make sure to check that out. Buy those novels and give him some love. I'll put some info on that in the show notes. Thank you so much again, JD. I love your stories, and you guys might be hearing more from him on here real soon. The story you heard tonight is the property of the author. It can't be reproduced without his express permission. Never had to say that before, but hey, same thing goes for my stories. Don't steal that shit. If you got a story you'd like featured on City of Fear, reach out to me or submit a Word document with the story to cityofphear@gmail.com. Got a few more guest authors for this season, but hey, the more the merrier. As always, for every visitor I get here, I love and appreciate you. If you loved or appreciated this story or any other, give me a thumbs up, like, follow, and spread it around. I don't think I could love you any more than I do, but I certainly would if you did a little bit of that. I hope you enjoyed your journey into the city tonight, and I hope you're safe getting home. And, as always, I hope to see you again here real soon.